Hello, welcome back. This video is going to discuss the role of the colon, a piece of punctuation, and how to use the colon effectively in your writing. Now the colon is formed by making two dots like this, and knowing how to use a colon effectively will help you to write clear, well-constructed sentences, and it also will add polish to your writing. Now let's look at the uses of the colon. I have outlined three important uses of the colon. The first use is the colon is a mark of introduction. And let's see how it is used and what does a colon introduce. The first rule is a colon is used to introduce a list of items. Now keep in mind that the list must be introduced by an independent clause, which is the same thing as a complete sentence. Note that the first word in the list following the colon is not capitalized. Now let's look at an example because that will make it easier to follow the rules. In this first example, we brought the following items to the party. Now you're starting your list. So you put the colon and you start your list. Potato chips, pop, pretzels, and cupcakes. And note that you do not start with a capital in the first word following the list. So the P in potato chips would be a small p. In the second example that I provided, my sister has 3 hobbies, and now there's your list. Colon, you start with a small letter following the colon, and your list is painting, cooking, and sewing. Next, I've outlined another rule, and that is that it is important to note that the statement that comes before the colon must be a complete sentence. The colon should not come after verbs such as is or are. So just to review that, if you look at this example, we brought the following items to the party, it's a full sentence. Then you introduce your list. In this next one, my sister has 3 hobbies, that's a full sentence, and now you state your list. So keep that in mind, that the statement before the colon must be a complete sentence. Now the colon should not come after verbs such as is or are. Let's look at these 2 examples that I provided you with. The first one, the foods I really dislike are spinach, liver, and blue cheese. Because you've got the verb are, it says in this rule that the colon should not come after verbs such as is or are, so it's incorrect. You would just have to say the foods I really dislike are spinach, liver, and blue cheese, and you would not put in the colon. But in this one, I dislike the following foods. Now, here is your list. There's no verb, is or was, so you would say I dislike the following foods, your colon, and then you state your list, spinach, liver, and blue cheese. And that example is now correct. The second use of the colon is colons are used to introduce a long or a formal quotation. If your introductory words to the quote form a complete sentence, then you use a colon. Let's look closely at this example and I'll explain and clarify the rule. The example I've included is a quote from Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin stated a clear point of view about marriage. Keep your eyes wide open before marriage, half shut afterward. Now if you look at this quotation, first of all, these introductory words form a complete sentence. Benjamin Franklin stated a clear point of view about marriage. So the rule is that if you do form a complete sentence, then you use the colon. So there's your colon, and now there's your quote. You start with the quotation marks, keep your eyes wide open before marriage, half shut afterward. So again, these introductory words, Benjamin Franklin stated a clear point of view about marriage, is a complete sentence, therefore you can use the colon. But please take a look at this next example. And I wrote that it is important to note that if your introduction to the quote is not a complete sentence, then you would use a comma. You do not use the colon. So let's look at this second example. Benjamin Franklin stated. Now that is not a sentence. So because it's not a sentence, these introductory words, you would use the comma, no longer a colon, and here's your quote. Keep your eyes wide open before marriage, half shut afterward. So the words Benjamin Franklin stated in this example does not express a complete thought. Therefore, you would use the comma to introduce the quote here and not a colon. I've provided you with one other example because it gets a little bit tricky, and I find the more examples that you're exposed to, the easier it is to follow the rules. Let's look at this quote. John and Gary won the prestigious poetry contest and excitedly stated these words. Now there is a complete thought. That's a sentence. Okay, that is a full sentence that could stand alone. So you use the colon, and here's their quote. We could never have done this without the help of our English instructor. Okay, so because these introductory words form an independent thought, you use the colon. But let's look at this next example. John and Gary said, what did they say? This is not a complete thought. So you can't use a colon here. You introduce what they are saying with a comma. We could not have won this prestigious poetry contest without the help of our English instructor. So in this example, the introductory words cannot stand alone, John and Gary said, so therefore you use a comma. So I hope you do understand the difference between introducing a quote with a colon or with a comma. And the third and final use of the colon is colons are used to introduce an explanation. They are used between two sentences when the second sentence further explains the first one. The second sentence must begin with a capital if it is a complete sentence. Let's look at this example. The first one here, Mary had to cancel her birthday party. She had a high fever and a sore throat. Okay, you've got two complete sentences. You could have put a period and started a capital. There are different ways of joining sentences, but for variety, I added the colon. But if you're going to add the colon, you have to make sure that they both are full sentences, which they are. Mary had to cancel her birthday party is one idea. She had a high fever and a sore throat is the next idea. And the next rule that you must remember is that this second sentence, following the colon, must begin with a capital. Now, if the colon is inserted between a complete thought and a fragment or an incomplete thought, then the fragment will not begin with a capital. All right? So in this example here, there are two complete thoughts, so you would begin with a capital. But let's look at this next example. There are two ways to complete this task, the right way and the wrong way. This is not a sentence. This part is, so you put the colon, and now because the second half is not a complete thought, you do not start with a capital. You would only start with a capital if it was a complete thought. So hopefully you understand those rules. And now here's a fourth use of the colon, but it's a variety of uses. The first three rules were very specific. This deals with a host of other rules, a variety of rules. Let's take a look together at them, please. The first one is after salutations in formal letter writing or in business letter writing. Let's look at these examples. If you're writing a letter and you're addressing it to Mrs. Gray, that's the salutation, the opening of your letter, you would say, Dear Mrs. Gray, in your colon. Now this is for formal letter writing, like business letters. To whom it may concern, with a colon. Attention, Mr. G. Brown, a colon. Or parcel delivery. Means about, regarding, and then you'd say parcel delivery and the colon. Now, if you were writing a personal letter to a friend and you were saying you were writing to your friend John, you would put, or Betty, you'd say, Dear Betty, comma, because it's personal. But as soon as it's a business letter, and you put a colon after the salutation. The next rule is after a speaker's introductory remarks. So an example, if you were saying ladies and gentlemen and you were addressing them, you'd put the colon. Or in this one, my fellow graduates, like a speech, my fellow graduates, and it's an introductory remark, you'd put the colon. Another use of colons is between the hours and the minutes in time. In this example, my piano lesson has been changed to 8:15 p.m. on Wednesday. So for the time, you put the hour, the colon, and then the minutes, 8:15. Or this next example, my doctor's appointment is at 1:30, 1 colon, and then 30 this afternoon. Another use of the colon is in biblical references to separate the chapter from the verse. I've given you 2 examples. The sermon was derived from a quote in Proverbs 4:12. There's your colon. Or we will all read aloud from Matthew 1, your colon, 4. Another use of the colon is between the title and the subtitle of a book. Let's look at an example. I borrowed the book Cooking Fast and Easy from the library. So the title of the book is Cooking. The subtitle is Fast and Easy. So to separate the two, you'd use the colon. Or in this next example, the children loved the reading from The Grasshopper, a Fable. So you've separated the title, The Grasshopper, and then the subtitle is A Fable. So there's your colon. Another use of the colon is between numbers, referring to volumes and pages of books and magazines. Example, the first one, the teacher asked us to review volume 1, page 4 of the study. So you're separating the volume from the page, so there's your colon. The article appeared in volume 5, Roman numeral volume 5, page 23 of the medical journal. You would see it separated with a colon. So you'd separate the volume and the page of the book with a colon, and it makes it clearer to understand. And the final use of the colon is in URLs. There are no spaces before or after the colon. And in this example, and this is a URL, http://InTheEnglishCorner.com. So no spaces before or after the colon. So to conclude this video, you can see that there are many uses of the colon in English writing. And it's a good idea to add variety to your writing by varying your punctuation. You don't want every sentence to just have a period, one idea, period, another idea, a period. Learn to vary your sentences and have variety in your writing style. Remember that colons can add further explanation, they could add emphasis, and they can also add polish to your writing. But be sure that you use them sparingly. Don't overuse them, and be sure that you understand the rules before you use them. Thank you so much. I hope you've learned quite a bit about the colon from this video, and I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.